death. Let me give you some examples from the Bible of sin's deceptive nature. If we go all the way back to Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, we go back there, we see Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve had everything they wanted. They had a beautiful garden. They had each other. I mean, they had all the animals they could want. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but they had, oh my, they had everything. And then sin came along, and he enticed them. He said, listen, look what I've got for you. You can have this, and you know, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. But in reality is, once Eve and Adam, once they gave in to the temptation and the sin, it plunged not only them, but everybody into sin. It plunged us all into sin, into something that, you know, we couldn't take care of on our own. Another example you find in the book of Joshua. In the book of Joshua, there was a man named Achan. And Achan was part of Joshua's army. And they went in and they had a battle. I believe it was the Battle of Jericho. And they went in and they were told, before you go in, listen, you're going to see lots of really nice things. You're going to see lots of money. You're going to see lots of clothes. You're going to see some cars and some camels and all kinds of stuff. Whatever you see, do not touch it. Don't take it. Don't take it. So they go in, the walls fall down, they slaughter everybody. They kill everybody. And so they're going around, and Achan's there. And he's looking. He says, hey, look at that jacket over there. It's a nice-looking jacket. And this is sin talking to Achan. Nobody's going to notice, man. There's chaos. There's all kinds of stuff. Go ahead and take the jacket. No big deal. Take it, take it. So Achan takes the jacket. He takes it back to his house, and he buries it. I don't know what good it was going to do him buried under his tent, but he's got the jacket. He gave into the sin. And the result of that sin was the fact that the result of that was the army went out for another battle, and they got defeated soundly. So, first of all, a number of Achan's friends ended up dead. The second thing is once word got out that Achan was the one that had caused it, he and his family were stoned to death. I don't know what stoning is exactly, but I know it's not a very good way to go. So we got Adam and Eve. We've got Achan. Another example from the Old Testament is David. David was someplace he wasn't supposed to be. He was at his house instead of at battle. And sin came in and tempted him with Bathsheba. He was up on his roof in the evening enjoying the night air, and he saw Bathsheba across the street taking a bath. And so sin's like, hey, look at her. She's pretty. Nobody will know. Her husband's gone. Nobody will know. So he calls her over, and they do their thing, and she ends up getting pregnant. David gave in to the temptation, and now he's got a problem. What ended up happening as a result of that is David had to commit murder. He gave in to the temptation of adultery. He then had to cover it up with murder. And if you read the rest of the story, you find out that after David did that, after he committed the adultery, he committed the murder, then the baby that Bathsheba became pregnant with died. So they had to go through the tragedy of that. And then there's more tragedy that goes on. One of David's sons violates one of his daughters, and then another son goes in and murders him, and basically the entire kingdom falls apart. All because David decided to give in to temptation. One more, and we'll move on here. This one everybody knows is Judas. Everybody knows Judas. Judas was one of Jesus' 12 best friends. I mean, he was one of the dudes that hung out with Jesus all the time, was learning from him, got to do everything. What a privilege that would have been. But sin came to him, and sin tempted him and said, listen, I can get you some money. How about some money, man? You like some money? You've been wandering around here. You ain't got no money. I mean, you're begging people for food. You got 5 loaves and 2, or whatever it was that, I forgive me. That's all the food you've had recently. You're sleeping in people's houses. How about some money? Money will be nice, right? And so Judas gives in, and he goes and he betrays Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. It's not a lot of money. It's really not. And as a result, he ended up betraying the Son of God. He ends up committing suicide, and his name is one of the, you don't name your kid Judas, right? Nobody wants to be called Judas. No, and for my literary people, if you've ever read Dante's Inferno, you know that Judas is he's encased in a block of ice in the center of hell. He's like one of the worst absolute people, all because he gave in. Greg's down here trying to figure out how in the world Judas is we'll talk about it later. It's complicated. All right. But Judas gave into the temptation to take the money. So sin's nature is deceptive. It shows us good things. It shows us the here and now. It doesn't show you the devastating effects that's going to come after it. All right, the second thing is if we want to truly make war, we need to know sin's strategy. Sin's strategy. And sin's strategy is to tempt you into following through with something that's already inside of you. Yesterday I had the opportunity to go and see the movie Thor. And if you're planning on seeing it and you don't want to know what I'm about to say, you can go ahead and step out. We'll call you back in when I'm done. But in that particular movie, in the movie, the character Thor at the very beginning, he's a very proud person. He's very arrogant. He's very cocky. He wants to do things with his fist. And so something happens, and he goes, and he's all, yeah, let's go, and let's kill him. Let's teach them a lesson. And his dad, his father, who's a wise man, forbids it from happening. He says, no, don't do it. Just let it go. We'll work this out. As soon as his father leaves, his brother Loki shows up. And Loki says, I agree with you. We should go and do this. Now, Loki is not telling him to go and do it. He's taking what's already inside of Thor's heart, what's already inside of Thor, and just encouraging him to follow through with that. If Thor had not been a proud individual, if he had not been full of pride and arrogance, he probably would have brushed Loki aside. But as a result, some very bad things happened because he followed that temptation. Proverbs 5:3-5 says this, "For the lips of a strange woman drop as a honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell." And that verse right there, most people read it as, stay away from strange women. Don't go and have relations with people that you don't know or whatever, because it'll end up badly. And that's true, it does. But the way we're taking it is this strange woman is the temptation, the sin that's coming at you. And like we've been saying, the end, it always ends badly. There's a myth, and I don't know how true this is, it's probably why it's a myth. But there's a myth that there are some tribes up in the Arctic Circle that they hunt wolves. And wolves are very elusive creatures. It's very difficult for you to get a wolf unless you're in a helicopter shooting them with a high-powered rifle. So, some of you will get that later. What they would do is they would take a very sharp knife and they would tie it to the end of a stick. And then what they would do is they would take some type of animal blood and they would pour it onto the blade and they would let it freeze. And then they would take more animal blood and they would pour it onto the blade and let it freeze. And they would continue to do this until the blade was completely encased in this animal blood. And you're probably thinking, why in the world would anybody make a blood popsicle? Well, here's what they would do. They would take the stick and they would go over and they would bury it in the ground. They'd bury it someplace where they knew a wolf would be. And the wolf would smell the blood. And he would come over and he'd go, blood popsicle. I've always wanted one of these. And he would start licking the blood. And he would lick and lick and lick. And eventually what would happen is, just like what happens with a popsicle, is you eventually get to the stick in the middle. But what the wolf has done is he's licked the blade of that knife. And so by the time he realizes that he's in trouble, it's already too late. He's already suffered so many injuries that eventually he bleeds out, and there's nothing that he can do. And I see from some of your faces that I just really grossed all of you out.